What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are here to talk about the Lions' newest linebacker, Alex Anzalone from the New Orleans Saints, who was signed today to a one-year, $1.75 million deal. So let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know DoseOfDion. He put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome everybody to a video. Glad you guys are here. Yes, we're back for another little film type of video. Again, we're doing it with this format because I kind of liked this one in the last video. I kind of liked it a little bit, but you know, we'll still do the other one, but I kind of did like this. So we're going to try it one more time here with Alex Anzalone, and I'm going to go through his strengths, weaknesses, and how I think he could fit in this defense for the Detroit Lions, and why he was someone that I really liked in free agency, and I was really hoping the Lions could snag. And after the Jared Goff restructure, now they had brought in Alex Anzalone, which is really the first signing they've made towards the linebacker room, aside from bringing back Jalen Reeves-Maybin and Sean Deon Hamilton to a futures contract. This is like the first guy that they've really brought in. And one thing that I thought was interesting when I was researching more Alex Anzalone is that, you know, when he was sitting free agency last year from the Saints after the season, he had a quote that basically replicated exactly what Jared Goff said, who was also a Detroit Lion. And he basically said this: "I just want the right fit and to be in a place where they believe in me." That's kind of the exact same thing that Jared Goff mentioned as well. So I thought that was interesting that they had very similar quotes hitting free agency. Now, one reason he says that is because in 2020, last season, with the New Orleans Saints, about halfway through the year, he lost the starting role. He became the backup for the New Orleans Saints. The guy that in 2017, when he was drafted, really worked with Demario Davis really well, and they were kind of the two guys there. But then last season, he started to lose that role. And that is because they traded for linebacker Quan Alexander. So they bring in Quan Alexander, and his role really diminished. And he said it was very difficult for him, you know, because he was going from being that guy to not being the guy. And he really had to, you know, work hard to kind of keep his head on straight. And he continued to push and play and, you know, really not to get that in his head. But he kind of became just a special teams guy for the New Orleans Saints, which I guess is good because he can play special teams for us, but we want to use him for a little bit more. So at 6'3", 241 pounds, let's talk about what Alex Anzalone brings to this team. Let's start off with the pros of his game first. And I think the first thing that you notice is clearly his athleticism. His athleticism, sideline to sideline speed, closing speed, ability in coverage to keep up with guys. He's got some pretty nice quicks, but he's an athletic player out in open space. Now, what's important about this is that you keep in mind how big the player actually is. Like, what kind of size the player. Okay, I feel like there's a big pause on this, but you guys know what I mean, right? If I'm talking about a guy that's 220 pounds, of course he's going to be a fast linebacker because he's 220 pounds. Alex Anzalone has a really nice mix because he's 240 pounds is what Pro Football Reference lists him as. He honestly, to me, looked a little bit bigger near the end of the season. That's just my opinion. Again, pause. But he did. He looked like he weighed a little bit more towards the end of the season. However, there is some really good athleticism for the size, and it's a nice mix, nice combination that kind of every team was interested in coming out of the draft because it was like, okay, he's not too small for a scheme, and, you know, he can kind of fit what we're trying to do defensively, and every scheme could try to find a way to use him. So he gives you scheme versatility in that way because of his athleticism paired with his size. The combination there is really good together. Anzalone, for example, he's 240. The good thing about Anzalone is you're not saying, okay, you need to lose weight because you need to be quicker, but then you lost weight, so now you're less impactful in the run game. At the speed, and he's still good size. And you're not saying to yourself, you need to bulk up a ton, but you're going to lose athleticism because he's still 240. He fits really well. But I think a very underrated aspect of his prototype of his physique is that he's 6'3", and 6'3" is pretty tall for a linebacker. So what's nice about this is when he's matched up on tight ends, when you're going against a 6'7" tight end and you're 6 foot tall, that can be an issue. When you're 6'3", that's pretty nice. Even in dropping in zone, playing over the middle, it can make it very difficult for quarterbacks to see because he has really nice range, really nice length and height. He's very position versatile. Kind of going to the last thing I just said, very position versatile. Now, if you watched the Saints last season, you notice that really early in the year when he was the starter there, he played a lot of the middle linebacker position in a 4-3 defense for New Orleans. And then as the season went on, you know, he started to lose his role. He kind of became more of an outside linebacker, in my opinion, you know, just based on where I kind of saw him more at, but he started to lose his role at that position. However, we've seen this guy line up everywhere for the Saints defense. And even back in college at Florida, he was doing the same thing. Middle linebacker, outside linebacker in a 3-4, and in a 4-3. And then in the 3-4, he could play inside, he could play outside. They put him all over the linebacker group. I mean, just wherever they need him, where they feel like he fits. So for the Lions, it doesn't necessarily give away what the Lions will do defensively, but it allows them to use him, you know, where they think they need it. Now, for me personally, watching Alex Anzalone, knowing his strengths, knowing Alex Anzalone's game where he thrives, I think he'd be the best by far in a one-gap defensive scheme. Even if that's in a 3-4, like an odd look that, you know, not a lot of teams run. Usually 3-4 is 2-gap, but you can do 1-gap, and, you know, we've seen that in the past. I think 1-gap is the best defense for him because a 1-gap defense it's less about size being, those big linebackers that we have with guys like Jelani Tavai, Christian Jones, Reggie Ragland. It's less about that. It's more about being athletically gifted sideline to sideline. Everybody's responsible for one gap instead of defensive line being responsible for two gaps and they're fighting off linebackers at second level. He doesn't really have that kind of size. He's big, he's 240, so he can do it, but I feel like he's personally best in a one gap scheme. And I think we've brought in a couple of guys that are the best in that, including Jalen Reeves-Maybin, who we re-signed, including signing Charles Harris, who I think is the best in a one-gap defense. So I really could see that shift next season. When last year we were in a two-gap defense, basically what that's going to do is, you might have less stats for your linebackers in terms of racking up total tackles, but it opens up defensive linemen a little bit more because they're one gap, right? They have one responsibility and they're more able to crash instead of being reactive. And for linebackers, it's more based on their speed, flying sideline to sideline, rather than necessarily, taking on offensive linemen at the second level, being up their numbers. So I think that's where he'd fit his best personally just from watching his game. But let's continue. As a third down player is probably where he's going to be exciting. I think as a third down player, that's where you can get a lot of use out of him. I think you can use him on every down. We've seen it. Now, if you watch New Orleans Saints, they do something interesting. The Saints use Malcolm Jenkins a lot, basically as a linebacker. And as we know, Aaron Glenn was working with the secondary last season, and Dan Campbell was their assistant head coach. So we know that, okay, it's something that they're familiar with, and it may be something they bring to Detroit. But you'll notice that Malcolm Jenkins played a lot of the linebacker type of role, especially on obvious passing downs. He became like a linebacker for them, but on early downs as well. And sometimes when that would happen, especially on obvious passing downs, they would go to a lot of safeties on the field and he would come off the field. Not that he couldn't help in coverage, but they just went completely safety if they knew that it was going to be a pass play. The reason I bring that up is because when you look at the Lions defense and you start to see some of the pieces they're bringing in, you can see some similarities. Not everywhere, but some similarities to what the Saints had going defensively last season. And that makes sense because they have ties there. I mean, you see the Saints, right? They use their safeties in the box. If you look at the size for Malcolm Jenkins, he's got basically the exact same build as Tracy Walker. Now, Will Harris could be that guy next season as well for the Lions, as he's played that a little bit before. But Walker has the same build basically as Malcolm Jenkins. Not saying he's the same level, but physically the same build, which could be a way they try to use Tracy Walker next season in that Saints defense. It would not surprise me if they tried to use him there. Going back to the safety position, that's why the Lions could be looking at adding that ball hawking free safety in the back end that can play the single high safety look, because if Walker's playing in the box, you don't really have that guy, right? You don't have that guy, and I think that's why they're bringing in KZ tonight. Not even just Walker. I mean, Will Harris could do this as well. Heck, they could have both of them in the box on obvious passing downs and things like that. Or, I mean, heck, even if they kept a guy like Bobby Price, right? Bobby Price clearly has the size to play like a linebacker. So you have these options like the Lions had last season because of all the safeties that they brought in. But also, I think that's why they need that free safety, high safety. Because if you watch the Saints when they did that, they had one deep, and that would be Marcus Williams. The Lions don't have that guy. And I think that's why we've seen some interest from guys like that. And I really ultimately think that's why the Lions could definitely sign someone there, or at least draft somebody if they don't sign anybody. But definitely something that I thought I would point out. Now, going back to Alex Anzalone, again, I think in coverage is his strength. It's clearly his strength when you watch him play. A lot of that has to do with his athleticism, but to me, he's just really nice in coverage. He's got a really nice feel for it, me personally. And the last couple seasons, we've seen our linebackers really just seem lost in coverage. And a lot of that is coaching, a lot of that is, but some of it is that they're young. Jelani Tavai was a young player. He's going to his second year last season. Some of these guys are young, and yes, Alex Anzalone is young as well, but it seems like he's really, really improved. I mean, sometimes it was an issue in college. It can still be an issue at the next level, but really a lot of it's good quarterback play. As we'll look off linebackers, there's nothing they can do about that in zone, right? They're reading the quarterback's eyes. So, but for the most part, he seemed to have a pretty nice feel in zone coverage, and his athletic ability allowed him to pass guys off with ease. Passing off crossing routes, switching off guys. He just had no issue with it. And in man-to-man coverage, he has way more than enough athleticism to help against tight ends. He's got size to cover tight ends. At 6'3", 240, he can match up with guys pretty well. This is the type of player that the Lions kind of lacked last season, in my opinion. I mean, aside from Jamie, but he's quicker than Jamie Collins, right? And he's a lot younger, of course. I think this is the type of guy you can line up against tight end and man-to-man coverage, and you're going to feel confident. This guy has lined up against slot receivers against times, and he can hold up for a few seconds. Now, there's this, I think it's against Curtis Samuel, where he follows him pretty well down the field, but the play breaks off and Curtis Samuel gets open at the end. Really nice coverage. You can just see this guy's top end speed, and the fact that he's able to stay with him at all is very impressive. You're going to have confidence with him man-to-man against receivers, against slots, depending on who it is, but definitely against tight ends and man-to-man coverage. You're just going to believe that he can hold that role. And of course, running backs out of the backfield, he has no issue with that whatsoever. Every once in a while, maybe he'll get faked out, but because of athleticism, he does a really good job of recovery. So he's not going to be perfect. He's going to mess up at times, just like every player does. And some of that's because he's young. Some of that is because the quarterbacks make really nice plays. Some of that's because it's a great route, but his reaction, but his ability to work his way back into the play is what makes him pretty special as a coverage guy. Pass off guys in zone coverage down the field, and he's just able to do it, and there doesn't seem to be much of an issue there. Actually, if you guys remember, one of the pass interference calls that he had last season came against the Lions. He took that deep shot to the end zone, and we had the linebacker. He was somewhat keeping up with him, but we ended up drawing the pass interference regardless. But that's where you're going to like to use him. Special teams, like I said, he could be an impact player there too. He's on that kind of deal where you could use him on special teams if you wanted to. And I expect, Lions, they've lost some guys, special teams. Even though Maben's been that guy, maybe they get him involved as well. He's a pretty good form tackler, I would say. We'll get back to that in a second, but let's go over to the things that I think that he struggles with in his game. And you notice I didn't touch on a run defense too much because we're going to touch on it a little bit here. First off, pass rushing. All right, let's go to pass rushing first. As a pass rusher, he wins with speed. And you would think because of his athleticism and ability and coverage, he's a great third down player, which he can be. He can be a really nice third down player, and I think he could be for the Lions. But as a pass rusher, there's improvement that's needed. There needs to be improvement for him as a pass rusher because he doesn't have that much power to overpower an offensive lineman. You have to have a lot of strength to do that. I've seen Jamie do it at times. Ragland did it a few times last season. Not very often, though. He's not overpowering offensive linemen as a pass rusher. He really relies on his speed, which makes sense, right? It makes sense that linebacker is supposed to be faster than the offensive lineman, so that's their advantage. You get teams in passing downs, you stop the run early, and now you can deploy these guys to get after the quarterback. So it makes sense. But that's kind of all he has right now. And it's something even going back to college, that's all he had, and it's still something all he has. He doesn't really have pass rushing moves. I mean, he kind of just tries to beat him with his speed. And if he doesn't, there's not much there. He's a way better, to me, inside pass rusher against guards than he is on the outside. When they put him in a 3-4 and he's lined up as that outside linebacker, doesn't get a lot of pass rush there. And I think it's because he doesn't really have pass rush moves and he's not that strong. And tackles, a lot of them in next level are pretty darn quick. He can win at times, though, at the guard spot because he's just faster. He can just blow him off the line. And it's like, well, that's just what you have. So as a pass rusher, there needs to be a lot of improvements, right? He doesn't have really a pass rushing technique, so it's very reliant on speed right now. As a run defender, I think filling lanes can be an issue for him. Now, he's played in a one-gap defense last season, which allowed this to be shown way less because he wasn't, responsible as often for picking up offensive linemen at the next level and still clogging the lane, to go make a play on the ball. He was a lot more times playing free, and he was able to get downhill and make plays on the ball. So filling lanes didn't show up as often, but it's clearly something that would be an issue, especially in a two-gap defense for him because he doesn't have that kind of size. And you saw occasions of it. He'll get blocked downfield and kind of get pushed out of the play. But for him, it's about being quick. It's about flying around. And it's really about making that offensive lineman miss. But he's not, really built to hold up an offensive lineman, reach out, and still bring a guy down. He's not the best block shedder, up down the field. So that's what I'm saying. Two gap for him, it can work. I think he can do it. But I think one gap screams way better of a fit for a guy like Anzalone, which makes me personally a little bit excited. There's solid form tackling there, I do. But I think some issues with it is he doesn't have that super aggressive tackling mentality. Like he seems to be an aggressive player and he shows flashes of it, like trying to shed blocks and he tries to play aggressive, but it's clear that he doesn't have that like hitter mentality where he just wants to smack somebody. I don't know what it is. It's like he's a little bit hesitant sometimes. He can tackle well. He doesn't miss a lot of tackles. He just doesn't blow through people. And I think maybe some of that is size. It's just kind of his play style. But that is something that I think mentality switch, that could easily happen when you're working with Dan Campbell for a while. Campbell mentality, because the guy will flash some monster hits. And the Saints defense was aggressive. So, he was a part of that for a while. But there are inconsistencies. There's inconsistencies of sometimes being out of place and having to rely on athleticism to get back into place. There are mistakes that he will make. There's plays that he's going to mess up on. But for the price tag, 1 year, $1.75 million for a 26-year-old, I mean, what do you expect? Right? There's going to be mistakes, but there's so much off of and so much to build off of here. I mean, I just think, wow. So he could be way better at that next year, with an offseason to work with these guys. But I do think as a run defender, running through people as often as you like. He'll show flashes, but not as consistent as you like. Okay, he's not a Jared Davis type of hitter. But where he thrives as a run defender is that closing speed. It's that twitch in space, and it's also the sideline to sideline ability. Outside runs, oh my gosh, he can run those down like that. I mean, just like that. And there were occasions where he would run down Swift from one side of the field and he'd work his way all the way to the other and catch him out of bounds. He was just fast. And that's where, again, one gap comes into play because defensive linemen are taking on these gap responsibilities. It allows you to play a lot more free. And when you get sideline to sideline plays, he can be the first one there, right? He can outrun everybody there. But also, it's in those short area yardage situations where he can be quick enough to, even if he picks the wrong hole, get back out of it and make a play on the football. Not a big hitter, not going to blow up the lanes, not going to clog the lanes. So you get him in, goal line situations. A lot of times they would try to put him on the edge to just beat everybody to the backfield like we did with Okuda sometimes last year. He'll kind of like shrivel his way. He'll kind of like sneak his way to the backfield and push people, but he's not blowing up things. He's probably one of his better examples here. You can see him line up across from the right guard of the Raiders, and we're going to notice is kind of the quickness. He attacks downhill. He's aggressive. aggressive, and he's able to beat the left guard who works to block him to his spot. So he gets the leverage there, and you can see he kind of holds up the offensive line. He's able to make a play, but you don't see that consistently enough in his game, which you would like to see. I think what you clearly learn from a play like this is just how important it is for those defensive linemen to hold their gap, and allow him to get to the backfield. That way he's not picked up there. He can attack downhill, and this is why you just want him to be more aggressive, I think. And I think, a mentality change can really help them, because I think there is power. You just want to see him play more aggressive, and he can make plays like this happen. Now we're going to take a look at this play against Carolina. He's playing the middle linebacker position, and this is where he thrives. This is where the quickness comes into play, even in short area situations. His ability to just evade the center here downfield and work his way to the ball carrier and make a play in the backfield. But now once again against the Raiders, you can see him switching linebacker positions. This is what you want to see more out of him. He's only 240 pounds. It's not bad, but he's not 260. He can't wait on linemen. He needs to attack like this. And you notice again, he attacks first, so he gets the leverage, he gets in position, and the offensive lineman has to dive at him, and he's able to go make a play. This play, once again, goes right back to my one gap point. In two gap, you're more reactionary. One gap, you're more attacking or crashing down. In this case, he's able to crash down. He's able to make a play. If it's two gap and you're so reactionary, just like the lineman, he's going to be picked up downfield. That's why I think one gap fits his skill set really well. And one more, once again, just for good measure against the Raiders here. Again, playing that linebacker position, and just watch the defensive lineman. There's no reaction time. There's no pause. They're attacking. They're crashing downhill. And it allows the linebackers to do the same thing, and they're quickly getting downhill. And this is how he can be impactful as a run defender. You can see he's working downhill. Everybody else is, and he's able to make a play. But you need to see that aggression out of him consistently. Plays like this really show the importance of defensive linemen being successful, and it makes sense as to why Lions will go get a Michael Brockers, would keep a guy like Nick Williams, and continue to add to the defensive line position and not really lose, because these guys are going to be very impactful, especially for him to have success. That he's going to have to work on for sure, but I don't think he's a liability as a run defender, because if he was, they wouldn't have played him on early downs, and they could play him on early downs. I mean, they played him a lot until he got benched, and really, I mean, they were very reliant, and really, he was a big part of that defense. I mean, when he was out there, the Saints defense was better, and a lot of people recognized it, saying that, hey, this is like DeMario Davis's partner. You got to have both these guys on the field. And unfortunately for him, one issue was, and this goes back to college, injuries. Injuries have been an issue for Alex Anzalone, and mainly it's been the shoulder injuries. 19, I think he had surgery on it 2 weeks in, and that's been an injury. He had the same thing in 2017. He had it back in college. Shoulder injuries have been an issue with him. But now, maybe it's healed. Maybe at the surgery, he's good to go, because he didn't go down with an injury last season, which I think is good. He's not coming off an injury. It was 2 years ago that he had his last injury. So 2020... didn't have an injury, just lost his role because they brought in Quan Alexander. To me, I think the Saints were just saying, hey, we got to go win some football games, and we feel like we can improve this area, so we're going to go that route. And I think, Alex Anzalone has a lot of potential. He has a lot of skills, but he wasn't completely honed. Like, there's things that need to be improved here. There are some inconsistencies. You could tell he's a young player. As a run defender, he's not as impactful as you'd like. And I think for them, it was like, okay, let's get someone that's more complete for now. And because we're trying to go win some football games. He does bring a different skill set than a lot of our linebackers have. So where could he fit in this defense? Well, I think there's a couple of ways that he could fit. Let's say, hypothetically, the Lions run a 4-3. I don't think they will, but let's say they did. So you got three linebackers, right? I think you could see him play middle linebacker. And I apologize, because in my video earlier today, I said he doesn't play that. He did play that a lot until later in the season, and he switched outside linebacker. I had my memory messed up. But he did play that middle linebacker position in 4-3. You could play him there. You could have Jamie on the outside, and for right now, Jalen Reeves maybe on the other side. Get those guys involved. One gap defense, just like they were drafted for. Great. Not really Jamie, but Jamie can kind of do everything. Or someone else could take over the outside role, or maybe he could play the outside linebacker position. You draft a Mike linebacker, or maybe you try to make Jelani the Mike linebacker. I don't know. I don't know. He doesn't have that kind of he doesn't have that great speed. We'll see what he looks like next season. But if you do go to one gap, he may work on shutting down a little bit, trying to get faster rather than bulking up, which Jared Davis did. It could be the opposite. Or you look at a 3-4, and his 3-4 versatility allows you to do pretty much anything. On passing downs, he can play out the edge spot. Don't think he's extremely impactful there, though. I think they just really rely on his speed, see if he can win to the backfield. But he had no sacks last year. They bring him on him. He just didn't have any last season. You can play him in the inside. I think he has a lot of versatility, because he has a really nice combination of size and speed, where he's not necessarily a liability. He's just not as impactful as a run defender as that you would like. I think Jamie can play outside or inside. We know that. So you could be looking at Jamie. Jelani could play inside last season, and put Alex Anzalone next to him. Now, Anzalone can also play on the outside. You mentioned, and he's more on the outside, I think, on passing downs, but you could put him at both here, right? Because he can do both spots. But I can see him more on the inside here. And again, this could be a one-gap scheme. So you could have Alex Anzalone, Jelani Tavai inside, be kind of the bigger guy, and then you have Jamie Collins out there. And then you look at that edge jack roll position. I think that could rotate between Austin Bryant, Julian Okwara, and Charles Harris. I think you have a nice mix there. So I think, even that's just assuming he started. So I think there's some, really nice possibilities with this. So I think there's a lot of potential with him. I don't think it gives away anything, but I do think in a one-gap defense, he would be at his best. I'm going to leave it here, man. I'm so glad Alex Anzalone is a linebacker for the Lions now. I mean, the price was great. I think I'm going to have to get myself an Alex Anzalone shirt or jersey now. I was going to get Jamal, but maybe I'll have to get both because I was a big Anzalone guy. And now that we got him, I think I got to do it. The Lions got him, so I think I got to hold up my end of the bargain and get something, to represent Anzalone this season. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.